Hello, 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 and welcome to the Full Quota podcast on One World Sports Radio. This is your South African cricket podcast where you can come through, ask us questions. We talk about all things South African cricket. And so today, we'll be talking about the squad announcement that happened earlier today. We've had a couple of hours to digest it all, so we're going to have a very, very interesting conversation about that. And we'll talk about the domestic season, the announcements and the changes to the new season. And we'll talk about the ODI series. I know the Proteas lost on Tuesday or next week, Wednesday, with also the T20 series and what we have learned, what we haven't learned going forward, because somehow we seem to be going one step forward and two steps back. I'm joined by Tim. Tim, how are you doing?
Good. Missed the last couple, but I'm glad to be back on the show.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we have missed you. Just to remind you that we're still we're still broadcasting the South African tour to Sri Lanka. The games are there. We're going to start with the T20s. I think the time is 3:30 now, not 4:30. So SA time. And also, so Friday, Sunday, and Tuesday are the T20s. But remember, you please do subscribe to our channel as well to be notified whenever we go live for this. So, Werner Erasmus saying, I still haven't fully recovered from the George Linde exclusion. We're going to talk about that. But how was that announcement, that hour of launch and squad announcement? Like, I got to a point where I was like, okay, fine. I understand everyone needs to talk, but not everybody needs to talk. Like, we even went to Corey van Zyl.
I think, and I did tweet it at the time, I think that half an hour of that should have been done. We had the T20 Knockout Challenge press conference. When that was announced, half of that, all those Corey van Zyl and people could have made it then. This, it should have just been World Cup and domestic fixtures. It should have kept it short and sweet. Yeah, go on.
I think for me, the one thing that irritated me a lot was the squad announcement was only 10 minutes. And I would have loved Graham Smith, Victor Mpitsang, Mark Boucher to be asked questions, probably prepared by the Supersport panel, or I'm assuming Crystal, in front of the nation to explain all of these things, because Twitter went into a meltdown asking for Victor Mpitsang to go out, asking for why Faf's not there, asking for so many things. And to me, that could have been easily handled, because the people who knew were us, because we're in the press conference. I was laughing my head off in the press conference. I'm wow. Are those some of the answers that are being given? And we'll tell you about those answers. But so I just was like, okay, guys, like, honestly, you should have given a lot more. Maybe even have Pommy in Sri Lanka ask questions and stuff like that. Maybe even have some of the players. I was happy that Timber's back. If you want to know about Timber Bavuma, he'll be out for a month. So he'll be ready for the World Cup. Well, he'll be ready for the start of the qualifiers, essentially. So he's going to have like 2 weeks of accelerated batting, essentially. But what we came here was for the team. The World T20 squad was announced, and these are the names: Temba Bavuma, Reza Hendricks, Heine Klaassen, Keshav Maharaj, Aiden Markham, Anouk Nokia, Dwayne Pretorius, Quentin de Kock, Vian Mulder, David Miller, Bjorn Fortuin, Lungi Ngidi, Kagiso Rabada, Rassi van der Dissen, and Tebrey Shamsi. There are traveling reserves, 3 of them in George Linde and Lepes Luguayo and Lazard Williams. Let's start talking about the first one, the biggest one, I think, that was key. The exclusion of George Linde and the inclusion of a man who hasn't made his T20 debut in Keshav Maharaj. George Linde's played 11 T20s for South Africa in a row, and he doesn't make it to the World Cup. Tim, what did George do wrong, and what did Keshav do right?
I'm also going to add Bjorn Fortuin to the picture in this.
Okay.
Because we know what Keshav can do, and he's done well domestically in the T20 format. Yes, it is surprised that he hadn't been given more T20 cricket beforehand, which I think is a mistake from Cricket South Africa, which has now created this furore in this particular situation. But you've also got Bjorn Fortuin, who's played 4 of the last 12, compared to George Linde, who's played 11 of the last 12. And in that situation, I did say in commentary beforehand, I did say during the West Indies, I said, to secure his place, George has got to score runs. I didn't necessarily think it was right, but I just got this impression. If he wasn't going to score runs when he got those little bits of batting that he got on the odd occasion, I thought that might count against him. And that in the end has unfortunately cost him. I think it is wrong.
Tim,
I think it's,
Tim, can I just hold you there for a little, because you were going to get to that. When they asked Victor Mpitang about George Linde, right? He felt that George Linde's bowling was actually what got him out the side. That George Linde didn't bowl at the top of the innings, compared to Bjorn Fortuin and Keshav Maharaj. So it wasn't the runs in the end, which is disappointing, because I want him there because he can bat.
Yeah, that's true. Victor did say that, but he misses a point. If you look at the career stats of Bjorn Fortuin and Linde, you would perhaps say that Fortuin is marginally the better bowler. Stats say otherwise. George Linde averages 22 with the ball. Fortuin averages 23 with the ball. It's small, but Linde stats are better. His economy, is also better, and his economy is better than Fortuin's. It's just over 7, whereas Fortuin's is nearly 7.5. So in every factor, George Linde is the better player.
And then the next big question, the question that was on everyone's mind, because they also didn't play Bjorn Fortuin, which is what
it's a problem.
Which is what Werner asked. Why wasn't he picked ahead of Linde in the West Indies or Ireland? Only at the last, like literally, this is like you're running the 100 meters. You've been leading the 100 meters for 95 of those meters. Okay, 98. And the guy who's at number 4 and number 3 beat you to the silver medal. You don't even medal at the Olympics. You're sitting at 4 now, and you have lost your silver and your bronze by guys who you didn't even think they would be there. Like, for instance, Keshav Maharaj, and I hope this happens tomorrow, is going to be making his debut for South African T20s. 3 games before a World Cup, Keshav Maharaj is making his debut.
It speaks to muddled thinking, doesn't it? It speaks to a selection committee who don't actually know what they're doing. That is a huge problem. That is a huge problem. Keshav Maharaj should have been in the T20 squad for the last 12 months.
He should have been playing. Not even in the squad. He should have been playing. The guy's been in the squad. He's never got a debut. And all of a sudden, we're going to be expecting, what happens if Kesh has a mare of a Sri Lanka series? You're stuck. And that's what I want to talk about this squad later on. Next question for me, the Faf question, right? We wanted to know whether Faf was in or out. I was always Faf out. I could see it, sort of a mile away. When they couldn't give you a clear answer, Faf is out. We got a question. Harshit says, who will captain tomorrow? Will Maharaj captain on debut? It's possible. With this, it's possible. We actually don't know. I'm thinking it will be Heino Klaassen. But yeah. No, because if you look at the squad, Tim, and tell me about your batting options, and we'll talk about Faf as well, right? this squad has no flexibility for me, right? I
Not
look at
at
it, I
all.
know Reese's a backup, right? So it will be Quinton Timber, right? It will
Yeah.
be Aiden at 3. It will be Russie at 4, David Miller at 5, and I think David Miller should be batting at 4. And then if you need because the way the squad is going, it looks like Heinrich will be batting at 5, and Dwayne at 6, and Dwayne will be batting at 7, because it looks as though we're going to go in with 5 bowlers and 6 batsmen, and Reese is going to be the sole backup, because I don't see this team being able to score 170 with just 5 batsmen. I understand
No.
Dwayne Pretorius is good enough to bat at 6, but I don't. Based on what Mark said when I asked him about the all-rounders and the balance of the side, he didn't. He feels he's got batting in the all-rounders, but I think the way this team has been selecting, with Dwayne not playing in the ODIs, I kind of think they don't rate Dwayne Pretorius' batting. So essentially, I think they'll go in with 6 batsmen and 5 bowlers, and the 6th bowler will be Aiden Markram, to kind of get them in. And that for me is disappointing, because had you taken a George Linder, you could have fit George in at 6. George can bat at 6. Just hope he doesn't have to bat for like 10 overs, but he can still do a job. So that's the other problem. But the Faf issue, finally it's been sorted. What do you think of that?
I wasn't surprised. I said it at the time. I wasn't surprised. Again, I think it is wrong. I think that Faf offers so much to that side, not just his performances on the field, but as a team leader. He was the best captain we've had, in my opinion. And although he wouldn't have been the captain, it's his leadership skills that would have kept that squad together in the difficult situations. You just look now what he's doing in the CPL. He's just made 100. So in terms of cricketing factors, he's in runs, he's in form, he's doing well. For me, it was a no-brainer. We know why he was left out. As Graham said at the press conference, they couldn't come to an agreement, which alluded to some sort of financial factor being the case. But for me, they had to find that extra bit of cash and say, right, there it is. Come in for the World Cup, and then you could retire.
Yes,
it's
so
a no-brainer.
Werner here letting us know that they've confirmed that Maharaj will captain tomorrow, and that's what I'm getting off of EWN as well, that they have Maharaj will captain the side tomorrow in his debut. So that's going to be quite interesting to see. But here's the thing for me with Faf, right? I thought under a Graham Smith, Mark Boucher regime, they will be they'll be able to bring back people who could help this team move forward, because the previous regime didn't have the same clout with the players, because the players didn't like them somehow. But we've seen it with the AB question. AB said, "No, I'm not doing this." Now it's the Faf question. When are we going to start holding those guys to account? Because that's what we were promised. They may not have promised us in front of the press conferences, but those in and around and supporting them were promising us people coming back. But we're still stuck with this very young team, same old, and without a Faf. And now everyone is angry because an expectation was created. And now that expectation is no longer there, and now everyone is up in arms, because technically they didn't promise us Faf, but people thought they were able to do it. Does this not tell you about their ability to do this job?
It worries me. As you alluded to, you and I watched the press conference at Graham Smith. He looked a man who really did not want to be in that press conference. To me, he looked like a man who would rather be in his house, get start chilling with his family. It does worry me. All he's got so far in terms of the bringing back power is Dwayne Pretorius, who, for some reason, all of a sudden, he doesn't want to play. he doesn't want
It's
to
not
play
he
him.
doesn't want to play. They're not selecting.
They're not selecting. And I find that baffling. Find it incredibly baffling. For me, the Morris situation, I knew that was never going to happen. I knew that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
I've said before that Smith doesn't like Morris. Smith sees Morris as a nice and shiny on the outside, but no substance on the inside. That's how he sees him. So that was never
And
an
Morris
option.
in turn made himself unavailable. But for
Yeah.
me, the interesting thing about that, the question I was asked about Faf, when they initially asked it to Victor Mpitsang, he was like, I never spoke to Faf. And I was like, you're the convener selected. Surely
How could you not
should have been
spoken to?
brought into the yes. And then the next question was asked to Graham, and Graham's like, yeah, we spoke to Faf. Myself and Mark spoke to Faf. And so I was quite disappointed that it wasn't a full panel of selectors speaking to him, giving him assurances. I know Faf wants to play for his country. I just don't understand how they couldn't make it happen. And everyone here doesn't need Faf to be playing West Indies, doesn't need Faf to be playing Pakistan. It speaks to the planning. Why didn't they, knowing that they're planning for the World Cup last year, get Faf to play against England before the IPL somehow started, or at the back end of the IPL, just to say, here you are, this is the team we're trying to build, and then you can keep him in, you can do Zoom things. He could have gone to that bonfire they had in Pretoria. That was okay, but include him, or make it work somehow from a we wouldn't have minded if Faf was being paid money to not represent the country, but just so that he was available for the World Cup. I wouldn't have minded, right? Of all the financial things that came out of SJN, Graham Smith allegedly gave himself a pay raise, 2 pay raises in the 18 months that he's been there, and now he's at like a ridiculous amount. I would have loved for him to do the same for Faf, or give him something. And to a certain extent, I would have fitted him in and then let's talk about the batting, because I think that's where the question is, where do you fit Faf into this, right? I would have opened with Faf, the World Cup. I would have opened with Quinny and Faf. I would have had Temba in at three. I would have had Rassie at 4, David Miller at 5, and my reserve batsman was Aiden Markram, right? David Miller at 5, and that's a strong top 5. Very, very strong top 5. Dwayne could come in as your 6, and you look a little bit better with the batting lineup that they have now. It looks a little leaner, but you know that you've got 2 powerhouses at the top taking the most balls. I'm a believer that you want your best players facing the most balls, which is why David Miller should bat at 4 for me, for the Proteas. I think AB de Villiers always batted one spot too low. And so for me, that's where I think Faf comes in. He's a better player of spin than the guys we have in the team. And to a certain extent, that's where it comes. That's where I would fit Faf in into the side. And I think for me, that's why I kind of felt that he was so important, because he's played at the UAE before last year in the IPL. He's going to be playing there now. He's on form, and it's a no-brainer. It's a pit, and to a certain extent, yes, I understand team cohesion and everything else, and I was talking about that before. But it is professional sport, and sometimes you need to do a win now move to win to make sure that you win the World Cup. And I think they missed the trick there by not trying to accede to some of his requests. It's not about finding the balance, it's about making the player happy. And when he said he was looking for the balance, I kind of wanted to know, what is it that CSA, they wanted him to play these games. So that's something that's quite cool. That's quite interesting. Let's talk about Yanaman Malan and Vian Mulder. But let's start with Vian. I'm surprised. I won't lie to you. I'm surprised. Very surprised. But I'm not as much surprised as the whole George Linder being dropped thing, because I kind of knew that when they moved off of Andile in Ireland, Vian was the guy. But Vian can't bat. You can't consider Vian Mulder an all-rounder yet. So effectively, you're going into the World Cup with 1 all-rounder, 7 batsmen, 7 bowlers.
Yeah,
and
I think they missed the trick there. They missed the trick. Vian is the golden boy, isn't he? He's the golden boy. Everybody likes him. Everybody talks about him in a good way. Comes across well. But the fact remains, he's not settled in the T20 format, particularly in the UAE. To me, it would be much better off if you've gone with somebody like Linda. Much more successful. He may not have done necessarily as well in the batting as we would like, but he's a settled cricketer, in particular in the white ball stuff. Much more settled. But Mulder is essentially almost untouched at the moment. He's the golden child. Yes, the one for the future.
At the Lions, he couldn't even make that first team that started that CSA T20 challenge. It had to be an injury that got him in. And that's my one worry about all of this, is that Vian's batting is not that great. And if we are thinking, because Mark in the press conference after the ODI, after that horrible ODI on Tuesday, he said that he was happy with the balance of the side playing 6 bowlers and 5 batsmen because they batted until number 9, and the number 9 he named was Keshav Maharaj. And Andile hasn't found form, but he's not in the World Cup squad. Vian Mulder hasn't scored a 50 at international level yet, even in the test arena, right? And we're expecting him to do so and hit out. And then who was the other one batting? Keshav Maharaj scored well in tests, but I'm not sure about in limited overs, because he's also new in limited overs. Now you're going to add this burden of saving South Africa when we need like 20 of the last 10, and he's going to try and look for boundaries. So I honestly think they've misjudged the batting ability of the squad, and that is why like a guy like a Vian Mulder may have been better served not being selected and look for someone else. Everyone's talking Miguel Pretorius, everyone's talking Marco Jansen, guys like that who've played, who've scored some handy runs lower down the order, could have helped there, but we didn't look at them. We didn't.
Oh, look, we went to Pakistan. We took Slayman. Slayman struggled in Pakistan, and then we dropped him.
Yeah, so he has the highest boundary percentage.
You give him one series, and he's gone. We saw, as you said, Miguel Pretorius now is doing sensational stuff in the CPL. Vian Luba for the Warriors.
Vian Luba
is another one.
Somebody who would, and he bowls off spin. He's a right-arm offie. He could have batted at 6 for you, but you only tried him in 2 games. He actually has the highest strike rate of any player who's represented South Africa under Mark Boucher in these past 18 months. He only had 2 games, 160 strike rate, and never to be seen again. I think he scored 16 runs in 10 balls. That's all he ever got. That's all he ever got of an opportunity. And we're now sitting here looking at a team that's quite unbalanced. And Werner says we also took Ryan Rickleton and didn't play him. We chose Miguel Pretorius and we didn't play him either. And so it was, today was a culmination of what the hell's going on. Like, we weren't sure, but like today everything's like, what the hell's going on? Let's talk boundary percentages and Janneman Milan. Because for me, Janneman is like, I think he's going at like 20% boundary percentage. Which means that 1 in every 5 balls he hits a boundary. But the other side of it is that he's not a great player of spin. And so the reasoning behind the Reza selection, even an Aiden selection over Janneman, is that. But if you look at the profile of the batsmen in the team, outside of Quinton and David Miller, everyone in that side doesn't have a high boundary percentage. They're not even above 16%, which is what Dan Weston said on the podcast to us 3 weeks ago, that you need about 16% boundary percentage. Aiden's at 14. Timber's way low at about 10. Rassi is hanging around 15%. Dwayne Pretorius actually is above 18%. So that's the good thing. And then you have Yanaman Milan, who's at 20%, but he's not in the side. And the question you're asking is that, is the squad asking its bowlers to bail them out? Because when I look at this team, Quinton, by the way, is at 19.2, which is pretty good. Vian Lib is also like in the early 19s. Jacques Snyman, who didn't get to play, his boundary percentage is the early 20s. Well, there were quite a few guys who were in the early 20s. One of them, Colin Ingram, the other, Riley Rousseau, which we could have given opportunities to, but we didn't. Is the selection panel missing, or are we still selecting? It looks like we're selecting from like 2015 instead of selecting from the here and now, because the here and now, this team looks totally different.
It looks to me like we have a selection panel who didn't watch this T20 challenge, who didn't watch, who don't read what people like Dan Weston tell us, that and not him, more and more.
Not even Dan Weston. Like a lot of the analytics guys are looking at that.
Yes, analytics now are not looking at boundary percentage. It's not the other things. Boundary percentage is the most important thing. And if you're talking about one player that annoys me more, that has been left out of the side, it's the Yanaman Milan one. You've given him the chance, you've given him the games, you've given him front row seat. You said, there, you're going to play in Pakistan against Usman Khadir and Nawaz, and you're going to play against the Sri Lankan spinners in Sri Lanka. He makes a 70 in Pakistan, and he makes runs in Sri Lanka. I think it's unfortunate that he's got this attack that he doesn't play with spin well. He has worked incredibly hard on that factor in the last 6 to 8 months. He now plays spin a lot better than he did when he first came into the side.
That 100 that he scored the other day on Saturday.
Exactly.
He scored a brilliant 100, getting through a killer Dananjaya. And look at this comment from Jean. He says, Yanaman is similar to Jason Roy. Both can't play spin, but England accept the risk because they know if he comes off, they'll benefit from it. SA being conservative again and playing it safe.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. I would open with Yanaman and tell him, the first 6 overs are yours, my bro. You need to score as many runs as you can, and you're going to get a lot of paces. The ball's going to come onto the bat. I just need you to clear the boundary, find the boundaries, and to a certain extent, Reza can't give me that. Reza is a great batsman. He can play spin, but he can't give me that. The other thing with Reza that we're forgetting was that Reza didn't get a lot of game time in the West Indies, and he also didn't get a lot of game time in Ireland. So I was really surprised that they still were persisting with him when you could have given a guy like Yanaman more opportunities in the T20s to see if he can come off. He hasn't started off well, but we're giving Aiden Markram ample chances in the ODIs, even though he hasn't started off well. You could have just been like, hey, Yanaman, here's more games. Play more games. Get used to the thing, because we need you to hit as many boundaries as you can and to get us up there.
The other thing is, you know what Reese's going to do? Reese's played a lot of games. He's 32. Yanaman was 25. Yanaman Milan's ceiling is a lot further than Reza. Reza is a perfectly decent player, but Yanaman Milan is an X-factor player who has a better potential than Reza. He has further to improve. He will be a better player than Reza is now in 5 years if he's given the chance.
And here's the point from Harshit. He says Reza would have made it ahead of Milan. Reza was decent in the West Indies. In the last match against Ireland, he made 50, while Milan failed in the T20s. But he also would have gone with Milan. That's what I was hoping they would. I kind of saw with the Sri Lanka squad announcement that Yanaman's not going to go to the World Cup. So those were the pockets. And so the way this team's going to play, and Kaushtab speaks about the winning formula against South Africa: get QDK out early, survive Shamsi's spell, and the rest is history. Is it that easy, Tim?
No, because you've got Rabada. No, it's not quite. But
we
there
saw
is
Kagiso on a quiet pitch yesterday. He went for 7 and over. He couldn't do anything.
Yeah, but there's an element of truth of that. There's certainly an element of truth that in terms of our really top quality players that are going to do something for us are QTK and Shamsi. There's no doubt. You nullify those two, you go a long way to beating us. That is certainly true.
And it's just giving us our it's as Werner says, we bat first, we scratch to 160, and we then have to defend it with our spinners. But looking at the squad, we're going to play all three of our I think we should play all three of our spinners, even with Aiden Markram in the side. But I honestly think they're going to go with two. They're going to probably go with Keshav and Tabrez, and then they're going to have Dwayne, Anrich, and Kagiso, and then they'll have Aiden as the sixth bowling option. And to a certain extent, I'm very uncomfortable with that. But because I know one of my seamers is not gonna do well. And in the event that one of my frontline seamers doesn't do well, Aiden comes in, and the entire world has now seen enough of Aiden to figure him out. And that's where my worry comes in, which is why George Linder kind of makes life a little bit easier. From that perspective, because
I said it in the Pakistan series, play three. We need to play three. We need to see if it works. We need to give it a chance. Whoever it was, whether it was Fontaine or Linder or whoever, we've now sort of played it. But I think you're right. I think that this selection tells you everything that South Africa are. Still conservative. Selections are conservative. And I think you're right. I think it is going to be two spinners and Markram.
So let's talk about some of the game breakers in the side. Quinton de Kock, David Miller, Arnold Nokia, Kagiso Rabada. Are they in the right frame of mind right now, or the right form right now for us to be so reliant on them, because they're going to have to play a massive role for this team?
Normally, I would say this T20 series doesn't matter, normally, but it does. It matters a huge deal, particularly when you think that Quinton didn't play in the ODIs. It's going to tell us a huge amount about whether the guys are up for it, whether they are together as a team, whether they are at 100%. It's strange to be pessimistic leading up to a World Cup. We're normally quite confident with we're normally in the top two of the sides.
In the past, we've always been a very good ODI or T20 side going into the World Cup. It was just competition play that kind of hurt this team. Whereas now it's the opposite. We're being bested by Sri Lanka, who have to go through World Cup qualifiers with guys on debut getting wickets off of first ball. We're being yes, we beat the West Indies, which was very good, and I applaud the team for that. But against Ireland as well, they did the job there. So we could be being pessimistic for nothing, but knowing what we're going to see, knowing that you're going to have that game in Sharjah against England where Timber needs to win the toss to bat first so that we're not embarrassed, because if we don't bat first in Sharjah, England are going to put 200 on us. They've done that at Centurion. They did that when they were here last year. And to a certain extent, you're going to have to now start playing situations and start doing that. Whereas if we had a plan and the plan was well communicated and we worked through the plan systematically, giving people the right opportunities, opportunities at the correct time, seeing different universes of players, we could have come to a different answer and a much more optimal answer than what's actually happening right now. And I think that's the frustration for me. But for me, when I look at this team, David Miller has to come firing. And I think this might be the right time. He's rested. it leading into the IPL, hopefully get some game time, he could do well. Anuch Nokia, we need those 150 kilometers per hour bombs. We need them. Like, I know England just selected Tamal Mills. We want exactly the same. We don't want anything else. KG, I don't know what you need, but we need to help you get to being the KG we all know. And then from a QDK perspective, we need that QDK from the 100. Just take a little piece of that 100 QDK, add it into the South African flavor. If those 4 come through, we could then be the dark horses of the World Cup. But the way we're looking at it is that sometimes they need help from their friends around them. And I don't think they've allocated them the correct friends for this World Cup. And that's sad. And here's the fun one, Tim. Lungingiti was supposed to be in Sri Lanka for the T20 tour. Guess where he's going? He is going to the UAE. He's not going to be playing in the Sri Lanka series to acclimatize to the conditions and join his IPL team a little bit earlier. So they felt for Lungingiti's development in T20 cricket that it was better for him not to play in these T20 internationals, but to go further forward into the IPL and acclimatize to conditions. That worries me a lot. I don't know about you.
Again, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. Isn't it more about player power? Players saying, I want to go to the IPL. I want to play that the end of that. Cricket South Africa going, well, we can't afford to compete financially with your IPL. Don't think so.
I honestly think they agreed for him to go because he wasn't going to get game time. He's not playing. Lungingiti is just going to go to the World Cup as a backup to Anuch and KG in case there's an injury. And it's not player power. It's the fact that I think the selectors realize that there's no point in having him sit there and do nothing for 2 weeks, whereas all the other IPL players will be playing. Shamsi's playing the games. Quinny's going to be playing. David's going to be playing. And it's just a planning thing because you didn't need to pick Lungi. You could have just sent him straight through to the UAE. But this thing of him being in Sri Lanka right now, and then all of a sudden, he's not going to get game time. Okay, he can get game time if he's there early. Even though he's not even. I don't even think he's going to play for Chennai in this back end. So it's just weird because it kind of tells you that these guys aren't thinking. It's a haphazard. Every day we make a decision, and you need to stop going from that to let's look at a year forward. What do we need? And I hope, because my biggest fear is for next year's World Cup in Australia, the same team comes through, the same squad comes through. That shows we haven't grown. That shows we haven't moved forward. But what we need is for selectors to be watching the domestic season, and that's what we're going to be talking about next. So we're just going to take a quick break. We'll be back just to discuss the domestic season and what it means for South African cricket and everything else going forward.
Hi everyone, I'm Denisha Devnarayan, and you're watching the Full Quota podcast on One World Sports Radio.
And that is our friend Denisha, just giving us a really young little ad break in the middle there. Tim, I'm just going to rattle through some of the domestic things that were spoken about. They weren't actually said on SuperSport. We were sent an email, which still baffled me. But anyway, so the domestic season is going to start on the 24th of September with the CSA T20 Challenge, right? What also we found out was that it will include obviously there's 2 World Cups, one for the men now, and then the next year in February, the women's team play in the ODIs. The West Indies women are going to be coming over around New Year's to play the momentum purchase. That's a good thing. And then we've got Netherlands and Bangladesh coming to South Africa next year. Those are for the Super League, but the big tour, India and Bangladesh are going to play South Africa in World Test Championship games. And there'll be 3 test matches, which I'm disappointed by. I would have wanted a 4th, but I don't think this team is there. And also, we'll be playing Bangladesh in 3 test matches. And then the other one is India A. We'll be playing 3 4-day matches in November against South Africa A. We'll start with that. What are your thoughts around that and those fixtures?
Well, it's certainly going to be competitive and a real awakening for the side, isn't it? To play against in terms of teams, it's going to be very, very competitive. I think it's going to be a very difficult series for South Africa, particularly if India have all their players and if everybody's fit and there aren't any problems with COVID. It's going to be a very, very tightly fought contest.
But the interesting thing about it is we're playing India as well in a bilateral T20 and ODIs, and the ODIs aren't for Super League. And so probably that's the chance for us to test new players so that when we play Netherlands and Bangladesh, we have a sense of the next level of guys who then we can move in and out of this ODI squad.
Dude, I also like the fact that the Indian A side is coming. I like the fact that is sort of working together. I think that's
all I want to see. That's who I want to see.
Going forward, I think that works a lot better because then you can see it. You can see the next crop coming through.
Yeah. And then the next announcements that came through, the Mzansi Super League, with a sponsor yet to be named, will start on the 7th of February. So they've moved it from that early December window, late November, early December, to February as well. And they're obviously, Tim, they're trying to find a window where they don't clash with any of the other international T20 tournaments.
Yeah, that makes sense. We know that the 2 versions that we've had of that competition, it has lacked certain marquee players. It struggled to get them. We had guys here for a couple of weeks. Then after a couple of weeks, they go and play the T10 in Abu Dhabi. So obviously the move is to try and stop that happening, to try and get into a position where they could get as many marquee players as possible. Because as much as we are behind the 8 ball in the T20 League situation, for this to succeed, it needs to have marquee players. It needs to have quality players playing in here throughout the tournament, or at least most of the tournament, to make it profitable.
Yeah, and Werner here saying that we need Libba, Marco Murray, Snyman, Pretorius, and Rickleton to have all big domestic seasons to keep their national team on their toes. Well, for some of these guys, they have, and they still haven't broken in. Rickleton was like number 3 in the runs in the ODI and the Momentum Wonder Cup. He never made it in. Marco Murray is one of the big hitting middle order batsmen in the country. He's done it in both Mzansi Super Leagues. He actually has the second highest boundary percentage of players currently in SA, playing in SA. The person who is the highest is Jacques Snyman. And it's just wild that guys like that were never given opportunities. Lastly, for that India tour, we're playing the test matches, 3 test matches, 2 at Centurion, 1 at the Wanderers. And then we're going to Cape Town for the ODIs and the T20. So that's going to be quite interesting to see the difference in how that works.
I'm assuming that's happened like that because of the COVID situation. But I'm not going to lie. I'm devastated that there's not going to be a New Year's test at Cape Town.
That's fine. I'll attend the New Year's test for you, and I'll let you know how it is. But from a provincial and domestic, the fixtures for the domestic season have been released. The 4-day competition, that is, they haven't released for the 1-day cup, which is going to be like a split between Division 2 and Division 1. But we're going to get there for you. The fixtures are released, and we'll talk about them as the season's about to unfold. The big one that I saw was the battle of the defunct franchise, or the broken up franchise, between the Northwest Dragons and the Imperial Lions at the Wanderers. that's going to be quite a tasty affair because some players weren't picked by the Lions and they were sent to the to Northwest, which was the affiliate. So I'm like, okay, I see you guys. I see what you're trying to do. But from that point on, and that's what the disappointing thing was. The celebration today was that we have a domestic tournament and a domestic season that actually is going to be very competitive. 15 teams playing cricket around during the season. We've got provinces who've never had an opportunity to play. Now they are. That is the exciting thing about today. But then, like I said, when you want to give people bad behavior, you give bad news, you give them the good news first, and then you give them this World Cup squad, and that's very disappointing. Tim, do you have any final words before we close out the show?
As I say, it's I'm looking forward to the domestic season. That as you say, that it's really good to see finally see the fixtures. But as you say, I'm left dispirited with the World Cup squad. I'm left confused, dispirited, annoyed, frustrated, whichever adjective you'd like to use. But as you say, there's not much we can do. They are what they are, and we have to accept that.
Yeah, no, well, we're going to have to accept it. I'm going to have to find a way to support them going to the World Cup. I wish them all the best. I really do hope that they find a way to win with the squads that they've selected because it to me, it looks very tough on the captain in games. And I honestly wanted South Africa to break the 170. I don't think they'll be able to at the World Cup. So they're going to find it hard against teams with guys who have some very high boundary percentage hitting and high strike rates as well to get going. So yeah, I just hope that somehow they can pull the rabbit out the hat. It will be a Cinderella story if we make it to the semifinals. So it's one of those situations. Like if I look at Australia, like a guy like Josh Inglis, like nobody knows about him, but Josh Inglis has a 22% boundary percentage. That says a lot about where people are looking and where we are looking. And I really do hope we stop playing this cricket that is 3 years behind, that we come along with the times. And when we do, because we've got the players, we've spoken about some of those players who could have made it into the squad. And it would be great because the world wouldn't have known about them. We would have just come and would have just dominated. But this is the team we have, so we have to support them. So all the best to South Africa and all the best.
I just want to add quickly, just because we're talking about Josh Inglis there. The West Indies squad is coming out round about now, if I remember. And the guys, the Caribbean podcast guys were talking about it, and they were saying it's a very real possibility that Sunil Narayan will make that squad. Now, he hasn't played for the West Indies for yonks.
Yes.
But because he's doing well in the CPL and he's bamboozling people, and trust me, I've been watching him, he has got the West Indian guys in all sorts of trouble. If he's in that World Cup squad, they're in there because they see him as an X-factor player to add value. Whereas we look at our guys, we see them as sort of, no, we don't need them. What was Victor said? Or I think, I'm not sure, Victor or Graham said that Tahir doesn't add value to the side.
That was the... I was like, dude.
What?
I was like,
what are you on? How can you say that? How can you say that Tahir doesn't add value to the side? I'm sorry.
No, it's because he didn't watch what India did to us when Kuldeep and Yuzvendra Chahal came to South Africa and bamboozled us on pitches that aren't supposed to take spin. I would have loved to have Tahir and Shamsi as my two spin twins, my attackers. I'd have one of Andrich and KG, and then I have three all-rounders there, maybe even George Linda in there, and maybe have I'd even put in Vian and Melda in there because I don't need him to bat, and I'd have Dwayne Pretorius, and I have a team that can cause lots of problems. Whereas somehow Tahir doesn't add value. Okay, so Imran, enjoy the CPL. Take as many wickets as you like. We'll be asking questions in press conferences after games about the guys who've been left out, because now this team goes to the World Cup with a ghost. But I wish them all the best, and I hope that they succeed, because I am a South African first and foremost, and they represent me, and so we're going to have to try and follow them. But we'll be back next week, possibly Wednesday, with a T20 and an ODI series review. So we're going to be talking all things ODI series review. We're also going to ask the question whether Mark Boucher is the right man to take this team forward after the World Cup, because what Graham Smith also said was they weren't looking at results up until the West Indies. They only started looking at results from the West Indies. So Boucher's record of having lost, I don't know how many, 9 or 11 series before the West Indies doesn't seem to matter. What matters is that they got to the West Indies, they started winning, so the clock started then, which is also just baffling. But that's another story for another day, actually for next week, Wednesday. So do join us then. Have a great weekend. Have a great time. Enjoy the cricket that's going to be around. I think there's a 5th test match. It's going to be like T20s going around from the Proteas. Yes, we've got T20s live on One World Sports Radio, so please do join us for those. Those final 3 T20s will be live tomorrow, and the guys will be taking you through the commentary. Outside of that, for myself and Tim, have a great weekend, and Lesale Kakahiso.